Hello there, welcome to Monday's North West Tonight. I'm Roger Johnson. It is a glorious evening, so thank you for being with us. Our top story. The parents of baby Genevieve Meehan, who was killed at a Stockport nursery, call for action to help protect other children.
When I sent her to nursery, I never, ever, in a million years, thought that anything like this would happen to her, or any child.
A BBC investigation has found 75 serious incidents reported concerning England's nurseries every week. Also tonight, a warning of the risk of wildfires, with dry ground set to get even drier as temperatures rise. A boost for electric vehicles as the government moves to support North West car makers in the face of US tariffs. From Laxey to Liberty, we'll visit the world's largest exhibition of works by the celebrated Isle of Man designer Archibald Knox.
And given the glorious weather, I thought I'd come outside and enjoy the evening sun. You do join me at the end of the programme. I've got some great weather news.
The parents of a baby girl who died at a nursery in Stockport want action over what they call a horrifying number of serious childcare incidents which are being reported to the regulator Ofsted. This is 9-month-old Genevieve Meehan. She died 3 years ago. We reported the story on the programme many times. And a nursery worker was jailed for 14 years after being convicted of her manslaughter. Well, now a BBC investigation has found that there were nearly 20,000 incidents of serious injury or significant harm reported to Ofsted in England in the last 5 years. The latest figures show that 4,200 serious incidents or reports of serious incidents were made last year. That's a 40% increase on the level 5 years earlier. Now, Ofsted said that the rise could be due in part to the work that it has done to encourage nurseries to report incidents. Hayley Hassel has been speaking exclusively to Genevieve's mum and dad. You might find parts of her report upsetting.
When I sent her to nursery, I never, ever, in a million years, thought that anything like this would happen to her, or any child.
Genevieve Meehan was 9 months old when she started going to Tiny Toes Nursery in Stockport. It had a good rating from the regulator Ofsted. Katie and John trusted that Genevieve would be well cared for, but after only a week at the nursery, everything changed.
The day itself was such an ordinary day. The phone rang. The woman on the phone said to me that they'd gone to wake Genevieve up from her sleep and she was limp and blue. And you think in those moments, that's my little girl. And she felt so far away.
Genevieve was found unresponsive at 12 minutes past 3. An ambulance was called and Genevieve was rushed to Stepping Hill Hospital.
And in the car on the way there, I was thinking, she's got to be all right, because I love her so much.
By the time her parents reached the hospital, it was too late.
You're holding her and just willing for it to be different. I couldn't understand how this had happened. I couldn't understand how a baby of Genevieve's age could go to sleep for a nap in the afternoon and then not wake up.
When police first got to the nursery, Kate Ruffley, who was in charge of the baby room, said she'd been regularly checking Genevieve.
I'd gone like every probably 3.5 to 4 minutes to check on her.
We've been given exclusive access to the CCTV footage of the baby room. It's too distressing to show in full, but from what I can see, it's clear that Kate Ruffley did not check on Genevieve every 3 to 4 minutes, and she was not caring for her properly. Kate Ruffley has walked into the nursery room and she's bringing with her a beanbag. She places it on the floor and she says, I'm going to put Genevieve to sleep on the beanbag so I'm not wasting a cot. She then takes Genevieve from where she's playing on the floor and she wraps her in a blanket. She swaddles her really tightly. You can tell that Genevieve's really distressed. She's crying and her head is, she's trying to raise her head up. And then Kate Ruffley walks away into the rest of the nursery and into the kitchen. She checks on her about 2 times during the next hour or so, but she doesn't get very close. And then after about an hour, You can tell that Genevieve isn't moving anymore. Kate Ruffley was convicted of manslaughter on the 20th of May 2024 and sentenced to 14 years in prison. But when police reviewed the CCTV footage of the nursery, they found further evidence of other crimes. Former nursery worker Rebecca Gregory was convicted in September last year of the willful neglect and ill-treatment of children. But even before Genevieve was enrolled, concerns about the nursery were being raised. I managed to track down former staff members who agreed to speak to me. Tell me about an average day at Tiny Toes. How many children were there on any day?
It was always really, really busy. There was never enough nursery nurses to take care of them all properly. It was absolute chaos.
Ofsted inspected Tiny Toes in 2017. That's the last full inspection the nursery had before it shut in 2022. They rated it as good. But Jade says nursery workers were told to hide the extent of the understaffing and ratio breaking.
They said, your group's over ratio, we can't find a member of staff for you. Can you take 8 children, so that's double my ratio, into this sensory cupboard and close the door and pull the curtain across? We were hiding from the inspector, so it wasn't obvious that we were over ratio.
There was an Ofsted inspection while I was there. The managers were straight on the telephone phoning all the staff that had called in sick or that were on holiday or that booked time off and said, we need you here, otherwise you're going to get sacked.
Jade resigned from her job in 2019. She says she tried to report concerns to management but was ignored. Danielle says she raised a number of complaints about the quality of the food given to the children and as a result was sacked in 2017. Genevieve's parents, Katie and John, believe nurseries would be safer if Ofsted inspectors checked CCTV and routine inspections happened more often than once every 6 years. They say they're speaking about Genevieve now in the hope that those who oversee our nurseries learn lessons so that no other parents have to experience what they've been through.
The person that's lost everything is Genevieve, because she would have had such a wonderful life because we love her so much and we'd have given her anything.
We're still Genevieve's parents, and it's so important for us that she has a legacy.
It's Hayley Hassel reporting. Hayley is here. It's heartbreaking to listen to and so courageous of Genevieve's parents to speak. What's Tiny Toes Nursery had to say?
So we contacted the owners of Tiny Toes Nursery and they told us that they refute the allegations made by Jade and Danielle that you saw in that film there, but they did fully cooperate with Greater Manchester's police investigation. Ofsted told us that they are looking at improving the safeguarding standards in nurseries, but there's no government guidance on the use of CCTV, the mandatory use of CCTV in nurseries at the moment. We have received an official statement from the Department of Education. They say they're introducing a wide range of strengthening safeguard measures from September, including enhanced recruitment practices to further prevent unsuitable people working with children, as well as new whistleblowing techniques and safer eating requirements. But it's important to say that the Early Years Alliance has told us that most nurseries are safe and caring places for children to be. But if there is anything that any parent watching this is worried about, then you can get help and advice from the BBC Action Line. That's bbc.co.uk/action line. And the full documentary, How Safe Are Our Nurseries, can be seen on BBC One at 8:30 tonight, and it's available now on the iPlayer.
Hayley, thank you very much. Hayley Hassel there. Now, a senior judge will chair the public inquiry into last summer's Southport stabbings. Sir Adrian Fulford, a former appeal court judge, will look into the murder of 3 girls and the attempted murder of 8 others and 2 adults. The killer, I'm sure you remember, was jailed for a minimum of 52 years earlier this year. Anna Jameson's live for us in Southport this evening. So, Anna, first of all, just tell us what more do we know about the inquiry?
Well, where I'm standing right now outside Southport Town Hall was 9 months ago adorned with flowers, balloons and cards in a public vigil as people in the town came to remember 3 little girls who were brutally murdered. 7-year-old Elsie Stankham, 6-year-old BB King and 9-year-old Alice Aguirre. Now, in January, the Home Secretary said there would be a statutory inquiry. Today, we know what that will look like, and it will be in two parts. The first will examine what happened in the run-up to the attack. So it will examine Axel Ruder-Cabana's history and the 18-year-old's interactions with public bodies, like the social services, like the education system, and like the criminal justice system. The second and the later phase of the inquiry will consider the wider issues of children and young people and how they're drawn into extreme violence.
That's a really interesting point, actually, Anna, isn't it? Because we do know that alarm bells were raised about Axel Ruder-Cabana's behaviour before that fatal day.
We do. In the run-up to the attack, there were 6 individual phone calls made to police and 3 separate referrals made to the government's counter-terror programme, Prevent. So this inquiry will examine how those were missed. The government says the process will ask how a young man with a history of extreme violence was able to slip through the net. And as you said, Roger, the inquiry is going to be chaired by Sir Adrian Fulford, who is a former Vice President of the Court of Appeal and sentenced Sarah Everard's killer, Wayne Couzens, to a whole life term. The Home Secretary says this is what the families deserve, and we have to do everything we can to stop something like this ever happening again.
Anna, thank you. Anna Jameson there, live in Southport. Now let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines in the northwest tonight. And extra measures to curb the spread of bird flu have been introduced in Cumbria. It means that anyone keeping birds must have them indoors. It follows a rise in bird flu cases in recent weeks. COVID booster vaccines will be offered to those over 75 and other vulnerable groups on the Isle of Man. The jabs will be primarily delivered from the vaccination hub at Nobles Hospital, and those eligible will receive a letter from their healthcare provider. The region's car makers have welcomed the government's announcement that rules will be relaxed on electric car sales. The Prime Minister announced the measures today, which he says will give certainty to the industry. It follows the introduction of tariffs on car exports to the United States. We sell about £9 billion worth. Davinia Ramos has spent the day at Jaguar Land Rover's plant in Halewood.
Some relief for car makers here in the UK following that hefty 25% tariff that was announced by Donald Trump on all exports to the US. Jaguar are one of the biggest car makers here in the UK. Last year, it exported 38,000 vehicles to the States and announced a £500 million investment in its production of electric vehicles. But over the weekend, it said that it would be pausing all shipments to the US whilst it tried to assess the current situation. So news today from Keir Starmer has been welcomed by its CEO.
While we welcome today's announcement on ZEV, we all recognise we face a significant threat: the application of tariffs from the USA. This is now the critical piece of work we need the government to help us resolve.
The Prime Minister in his speech today said he would be backing British brilliance by supporting electric vehicle production and confirmed that a ban on the sale of hybrid vehicles would be extended to 2035. Remember, in Labour's manifesto, they said that would be 2030. That has now been extended. But experts say whilst the government has taken some positive steps, it hasn't gone far enough.
From a Jaguar JLR point of view, I'd say they'd be pretty happy right now. The US is their biggest market. They're going to be looking at big hits, hence why they've suspended exports. It is good news for the UK car industry. There are still a lot of grey area, though.
So yes, a bit of relief for car makers here in the UK, but there is talk that some others might follow Jaguar's lead and suspend all exports to the US whilst they work out what the current market is doing. Davinia Ramos, BBC North West Tonight in Halewood.
Interesting developments then, and the issue of tariffs also made it into the day's campaigning for the Runcorn and Helsby by-election today. The Reform leader, Nigel Farage, was in the area. He said the discussions about tariffs had highlighted issues in the British car industry.
I don't like the tariffs at all. Thank God that across the board it's 10%, having left the European Union, and not 20%. But I would say this, what is happening with cars, with these tariffs, is perhaps waking us up to the real crisis. British car industry is in a state of total collapse. There won't be a car industry in 5 years unless we deal with these EV targets.
Now we're going to hear from the other party leaders ahead of polling day next month. There are 15 candidates standing in the Runcorn and Helsby by-election. Their names are there on the screen, and you can find details of all of them on the BBC News website. Speaking of which, let's take a look at some of the stories that people are reading on the news website and app tonight. A man's been charged after the wife of the Manchester United goalkeeper Andre Onana was robbed. Melanie Camayu had a designer watch and bag taken outside a restaurant in Alderley Edge in Cheshire last weekend. Elite triathlete Olivia Knowles has been told her leukaemia is terminal after being initially diagnosed with long COVID. The 33-year-old from Blackpool is still raising money to help others. And an 11-year-old from Chester has beaten rivals from around the world to land a part in a remake of Steven Spielberg's The Land Before Time. But Summer Jules says when she's older, she wants to be a barrister. Those stories and more at bbc.co.uk/local news, or, of course, as always, you can find them on the BBC News app. Now, hundreds of firefighters have spent the last couple of days dealing with wildfires as the region enjoyed warm, dry weather. There were blazes in Cumbria, one last night as well near Oldham in Greater Manchester, but it has prompted yet more warnings from fire and rescue services right across the region about leaving barbecues at home. Here's our environment correspondent, Judy Hobson.
A wildfire near St Bees in Cumbria, just one of almost 40 fires which broke out in the county over the weekend.
It's the dryness, that sustained period of dryness that we've had, and that's drying out the vegetation and the wind, that gentle wind that we've had as well, and it's just making it really, really tinder dry. And that's the problem. The smallest ignition source that we introduce to that can then start that big fire.
Several of the fires had broken out near a railway line along the Cumbrian coast. The Fire and Rescue Service is investigating whether the cause had been a passing steam train. The steam train company insists it wasn't responsible. Meanwhile, last night, a large fire broke out on moorland above Dovestones Reservoir. At its height, it covered an area of 150 by 100 metres.
It's not clear what caused the fire here, but with the hot weather and the lack of rain, and the ground is already tinder dry, when fires do break out, they're spreading quickly.
Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service do have specialist equipment to deal with wildfires, but it took teams 5 hours to put out the flames last night.
The concern is when we task our fire crews to deal with wildfires, they can't be in two places at once, and we're pulling them away from our communities when we do that.
The message is to not light fires or barbecues on moorland and report anyone you think is acting suspiciously.
Just be aware that we have a system through our control, which is called 999i, which allows us to take video footage from your phone and transmit that to our control so they can see the size of the fire. And that allows us to give a really good bit of intelligence towards deploying the appropriate resource to that fire so we can quickly and effectively put that fire out.
Judy Hobson, BBC North West Tonight, Dovestones.
Right, let's move straight on to sport. Ian's got the day off, so Julia Bold is with us in the studio. A debut for you. I'm so sorry, we've given you a really dull Manchester derby to look back on.
Yeah, it wasn't the best of games, was it? In fact, all the talk is about what happened off the pitch, because Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola has accused United fans of a lack of class after they made abusive chants about Phil Foden's mum at yesterday's derby match. The City boss said those responsible should be ashamed of themselves, while the game itself was dubbed one of the dullest derbies by pundits.
To give the best spectacle to every fans, and then when we are not fighting for the big things, of course it's different. But you have to look at the context of the game.
Yes, honestly, I don't know. Understanding the mind of the people, be involved, the man from field, be involved in that. So it's lack of category, class, and they should be ashamed.
Fully aware of the fact that we have to compete for 7 nowadays, I think. 7 more games.
Into the EFL now, and a good weekend for a trio of our teams chasing promotion. Burnley have moved to the top of the Championship after 2 goals from Jayden Anthony secured a come-from-behind win at Coventry, and their rivals Sheffield United and Leeds both slipped up. In League One, Stockport scored after just 62 seconds in a comfortable 2-0 win at Exeter. Both goals from Kyle Wootton as County move up to 4th, and Bolton have joined them in the playoff places after Aaron Collins' goal was enough for a home win against Bristol Rovers. In League Two, there were defeats for struggling Morecambe and Accrington, but Tranmere gave their survival hopes a major boost with a 4-0 win over Chesterfield, which moves them 7 points clear of the relegation zone. On to Rugby League and an all-North West semi-final to look forward to in the Challenge Cup. Warrington Wolves booked a last 4 meeting with Lee Leopards after beating St Helens in a cracking quarter-final yesterday. It was all square at the break, but the Wolves took control in the second half, and this brilliant try from George Williams secured a 20 points to 12 success. Cricket now, and Lancashire are still holding out for a draw in their first match of the County Championship season against Middlesex at Lords. The Red Rose County had been keeping just about in touch, chasing 309 to win, but 2 quick wickets for Middlesex look to have taken that possibility away. Lancashire are still batting, but a short time ago it needed an unlikely 48 runs from 2 overs with 2 wickets remaining. Well, at least the weather has been good for the cricket today, hasn't it, Roger? It has, absolutely, yeah. They didn't need saving by the rain, and if they did, too bad it wasn't going to happen. Julia, thank you very much indeed. Well done. Right, just before the weather with Kay, the largest exhibition showcasing work by Manx artist Archibald Knox has gone on display on the Isle of Man. In his day, Knox was one of the most famous designers in Britain. He was known for his trademark Art Nouveau Celtic swirls. Of course, I knew that. It's not just written down. And also his work with the famous department store Liberty of London. It is, though, the first time that some of the 200 pieces have been seen in public, as Ashley Tracy now explains.
Jewellery, paintings and furniture dating back to the early 1900s now on show together for the first time. Born on the island in 1864, Archibald Knox was Liberty of London's primary designer at the height of their success.
It was only a small part of his life, but very, very productive and wonderful as a designer. But then you come to the Isle of Man, you see the furniture, you see the textiles. I don't know of any other designer with so much breadth and depth to his work.
On show at the Manx Museum, it is the largest ever exhibition of Knox's work.
He produced hundreds, if not thousands, of designs for Liberty, all completed on this desk. And isn't that amazing? Something so solid and real that created all those, the jewellery and the metalware that people so love today.
The display brings together more than 200 pieces from across the British Isles by the artist who has admirers all over the world.
He is out there. The work is remarkable. It's passionate, it's highly modernist, and it's impossibly referring back to historical periods like the sort of Celtic Norse period on the Isle of Man. And it's just breathtakingly beautiful.
The team that put the exhibition together say it's special, not only because some of the artefacts here are going on display for the first time, but it's also a chance to understand how Archibald Knox was inspired by his home.
It's a real celebration of his diverse talent, but also a real celebration of the Isle of Man, because we firmly believe that you can't necessarily understand Knox or collect Knox without setting foot on the island that was in his soul.
Part of a wider campaign to include walks, talks and workshops exploring the landscape which inspired his work, Knox Order and Beauty will celebrate the life and legacy of the designer until March next year. Ashley Tracy, BBC North West Tonight, Douglas.
It is a glorious evening. We have sent Kay outside. I'm not sure you need a full 2 minutes to say it's going to stay sunny, but go on, good luck trying to fill it.
I certainly will, Roger. And actually, it's a beautiful evening, but you know, it's a little bit nippy in the shade. Now then, let's take a look at the headline for this week. Roger, you were right, glorious weather. So high pressure is in charge. Now, it's going to lead to some chilly nights, but that will then lead to glorious spells of sunshine. dry and fine days. So let's take a look at the pressure chart. Now you can see, well, you can barely see any lines on the pressure chart, and that's because the winds really are going to be very gentle as we head through the day tomorrow, and that's going to make it feel pleasant as temperatures get to about 17 degrees. Through this evening, if you are heading out, I would advise a little jacket. It is a little bit nippy in the shade, but it'll be dry and clear as we head overnight tonight. Now, that again is going to lead to another chilly night like we had last night. Some of us woke up to a touch of frost, didn't we? And some patches of mist and fog, particularly southern parts of Merseyside and for Pennine areas. Temperatures down to about freezing or just below in more rural spots. So chilly to start your day tomorrow. We lose the mist and fog, and then we're looking at a dry and a fine day. Lengthy spells of sunshine. Bear in mind, pollen levels high, tree pollen, UV levels moderate, and you might have spotted Isleth on the map. Karen, thank you for suggesting that one. Top temperatures tomorrow around about 17 or 18 degrees. Now, we're going to repeat that performance as we head through tomorrow evening and overnight into Wednesday. So clear skies once again, and again it's going to get chilly. Temperatures down to probably more like 2 to 5 degrees as we head overnight into Wednesday. Looking at the bigger picture then on Wednesday, you can see there is more cloud in the east. Now, we're in the best place to see the best of the sunshine, especially for coastal parts and for the Isle of Man. We should get temperatures around 17 or 18 degrees again. And then as we head towards the outlook Thursday, increasing temperatures by Saturday, Roger, 21 degrees. And the breakdown, it comes on Sunday, but let's forget about that one. That's your forecast.
Thank you very much indeed, Kay. Isleth is the place on the weather map this week. Thank you for watching. Whatever you're doing, enjoy the sunshine. Good night.